One of my favorite practice projects for the skew is to turn eggs. Turned a half dozen right here out of 3 blanks that are about 6 inches long. This is a great exercise to practice skill, control, and also to develop your eye for form. When I go about turning eggs, I need to rough and do a real quick finish cut across the surface, a planing cut. I'm going to establish 2 eggs, and this diameter of blank is just slightly smaller than the 3 that I just showed you. I'm going to establish my dimensions of my eggs, or my rough dimensions of my eggs. It's a great technique. Oh, that's a little bit short. Maybe I'll make it a little bit longer. It's a great technique to develop your eye and estimation and sizing. I see that this line to this line is shorter than this line to this line. I'm going to do 2 eggs on this blank. Give it a little bit more drive. Now that I've got my boundaries set, I'm going to do some rolling cuts. Need to make my V-cuts a little bit deeper. That one's a pointy egg. There we go. There you have it, 2 eggs and 1 blank. Great practice project, great project for developing your eye for form, getting a nice finish cut. These 2 could use a little bit of sanding, maybe with 400 or 600 grit, just to ease the transitions. Two more for my collection. If you'd like to take your skew skills to the next level, try spinning tops using only the skew. 4 of the basic cuts are included in this project, and depending on your design, you can incorporate the other 2 as well. This is a 1.5 inch square by 6 inch long piece of beech. I've mounted the blank between a cup drive and a live center. I'm going to get ready to do a planing cut. I'm not going to take it all the way to a cylinder just yet, but I'm going to get pretty close. The end towards the tailstock is the portion of the blank that my chuck will be holding. I can clean up the end grain right now as well using that paring cut. Just another chance to practice. I'm removing the blank from between centers and getting ready to hold it in the chuck. I don't finish turning this portion to a cylinder because typically when you grip it in a chuck, it grips and compresses the fibers unevenly, shifting the blank off center a slight amount. So I always leave this step of finishing the cylinder until after I've gripped it in the jaws. If I'm concerned about the grip of the chuck jaws, or I'm using a traditional shallow jaw, I might want to bring the tailstock up for extra support, especially when I'm turning the tops out at the very end of the blank. Planing cut. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Peeling cut. I'm going to do a paring cut across the end of the handle or the top of the handle. Make sure it's a nice clean point so I can spin it upside down as well. Paring cut across the ends of the fibers. I'll do a planing cut for the handle to take it down to size and get a clean cut. Again, using the short point. I'll do one more paring cut. Oh, I need to do a planing cut up here. I didn't do it quite far enough into the blank, just to true up the rim. There we go. Paring cut across the face, one more. Planing with the short point just to establish that transition between the handle and the top of the body. You'll notice how smooth this surface is off of the skew. You can read the shine off of the bevel. That'll give you an idea of just how smooth that is. If it was textured, that reflection would jump across the surface. Nice and smooth. Now I'm going to do a V cut to part it off and to establish the point. Scoring, then angling, long point down, going the other side to eject the shaving, back to the original side, steering that bevel all the way to the bottom of the V or the valley of that V, picking up the cut to make a nice smooth cut along the base of the spinning top. I need to widen the V just a little bit so that I have clearance for the skew. And this is where I need to slow down and take my time. One of the most critical parts of a spinning top is the tip. I'm going to cradle the top, just steadying it by the handle, and turn with one hand and do a really slow V cut. You'll notice on the tip there's a little bit of a barb. That's from the last little straws in the very center. As it was parted away, the top angles and it breaks those straws. So you get a little bit of a hook there. If it's a large hook, take a carving knife or even your skew if you're comfortable with that and pare the fibers off, cleaning it up. Or you could take a little bit of 400 or 600 grit sandpaper and just rub that burr right off. This is so small and I'm going for a no sanding approach. So I can take this and I can just polish it on the ways of the lathe. Burnish that little barb and the bottom, and now it's nice and shiny, slightly rounded. That will actually allow it to spin even better than if it was a really sharp point. There's first of 3 tops. On the second top I'm going to turn for you, I'm going to add some embellishment, a little bit of texture and a little bit of color. I'll explain that as I go. Second top, planing the cylinder so it's true. Peeling cut for the handle. Planing cut for the handle. Paring the end of the handle so I've got a nice crisp point, and paring the ends of the fibers. I'll do another planing cut for the handle just to bring it down to size and refine the shape and the surface. I'm going uphill or up against the grain. You can actually do this if you have a really sharp tool and you take fine cuts. I know it goes against kind of the conventional thought of always cut downhill with supported grain, but if you have a razor sharp tool, you can do it for a very fine cut. Okay, I need to take one more refining cut just to get rid of a little bit of texture on this surface. There we go, just slowing it down a little bit. Work on that transition from the handle to the body. Nice and smooth and ready for texture. My embellishing technique for this top is going to use a homemade chattering tool. You can definitely purchase a chattering tool through a woodworking catalog or a woodworking store. I'm going to use one that I have made myself using a modular handle from a home center store and a shatterproof hacksaw blade. I'm going to adjust the extension from the handle. I'm going to change the orientation of the tool rest. I'm going to apply the chatter tool to the face of the blank, that's the top of the spinning top body, and I'm going to angle the edge between 7 and 8 o'clock if this were the face of a clock. When I do this, it's going to squeal and squawk and make all sorts of noise. That's telling me that it's chattering in and out of the wood. That's good. Get the vibration started. Let's take a look. The chatter pattern is really subtle, but it's a great use of harmonics. I'm going to trim this using the short point of the skew to make a nice, clean, crisp boundary around the outside of the chatter pattern, and then we'll color it to highlight it. Short point of the skew. That establishes a nice crisp boundary between the non-chattered surface and the chattered surface of the top. Let's apply some color. I'm going to take black to the chattering section. That really shows off texture well. I need to turn the lathe speed way down so that it doesn't burnish the tip of my permanent pen. I'm going to saturate this section of the top with black ink so that it really shows off with a deep black color. I'm also going to go into that groove with the black, and then I'm also going to color in this outer section with black. So I give a nice surface to highlight. You'll notice I missed a little bit of the chatter marks. They're a little bit deeper than the pen would go. That's okay. I can do it by hand with the lathe turned off. As long as I've saturated the wood with color, it really doesn't make a difference if I go over it one more time, just in little spots, just to touch up. I need to highlight this or trim it and create the black as a focal point. So for this top, I'm going to use silver. This is another Sharpie pen, but I need to wait till the black dries. So I'm going to spin it, and I'll actually true up the outside edge. I notice there's a little flat spot right here that I need to take off so that it'll be a really clean spinning top. Let me take care of that first. Turning the lathe speed back up. Planing cut just to true it up. Really clean cut. This also allows that black that I use towards the outer rim to be a really clean, crisp transition. You'll notice that when I turn the lathe off. Really clean, crisp transition between the top of the body and the rim. Okay, now it's time to apply some silver. Sharpie also makes a bronze, a gold, and a copper. I really like the silver and the copper and the bronze. The gold is a little bit brassy for me, but it's up to you. I'm going to slow the lathe way down, and I'm just going to frame this. I'm going to put one pinstripe in the middle of the outer boundary, and I'll put another pinstripe on the inside edge where it transitions from natural wood to black. So I've added some silver right here in the center of the outer boundary of black, as well as where the black transitions into wood. I really like silver. It really pops whatever color I'm using. So that's black and silver. You'll notice the pinstripe even more when I take it off the lathe and hold it to the light so that we get the shimmer. The handle could be blackened or silvered, but I'm going to leave it natural since the underside of the body will be natural color as well. Now a V cut to part the top off and to create the point. With a little bit of practice, you can take some pretty heavy cuts with that V cut. Gaining a little bit of clearance down towards the tip. Just whittling it away. There we go. Slowing down. I'm at about a 1/16 to a 32nd of an inch diameter. Cradle the handle of the top and turn that V cut one-handed, using my body ever so carefully to control the tool and being patient. There we go. That black really pops that subtle texture nicely, and the silver trims it beautifully. You know, there is ever so slight a burr. I could remove it with about 5,000 grit. It's really, really fine, but that will hang up in any little texture of the surface that it's spinning on. So I'm still going to repeat my burnishing technique using the ways of the bed, just to polish that tip. A polished tip makes a better spinner. It's more forgiving. It doesn't grab in texture that it might be spinning over top of. Top number 2. For the third spinning top, I want to highlight a different texturing technique and another coloring technique that you can use. This texturing technique is going to use a tool created by Henry Taylor. It's called the ELF texturing tool. It's a great tool to add another style of texture to the surface. Let's take a look. Planing cut to true up the cylinder. Peeling cut to establish the handle size. Paring cut across the end of the handle. Paring cut across the face. Planing cut to clean up the handle. Again, really sharp tool, allows me to go slightly uphill. Using that short point down, establishing the transition between the face and the handle. One more paring cut across the face to get an ultra clean finish cut. Clean, crisp transition. Now I'm going to show you how I use the Henry Taylor ELF decorating tool with they call it a flame or oval bit. It's a rotary cutter, and it actually cuts the texture in the surface. You need an ultra clean surface for this to really show off the detail and the crispness of the cut. I've set the lathe at a very slow speed. I'm going to anchor the tool on the tool rest, and then I'm going to apply the cutter to the surface and just hold it in position. Apply it and hold and press slightly. I'm going to remove the cutter from the surface and go out, and I'm going to angle it just a little bit more to show you another style of spiral that this can create. This will be a very open spiral because I have the cutting teeth more in line with the motion of the wood. I need to use a natural bristle brush to clean up any little fuzz or dust that's created by this cutting action. You'll notice that I've created two different spiral patterns, one that is very close to a radial pattern, and the second one that is very much a sweeping open spiral towards the rim of the top. I'm going to use some color to color in this texture to really make it pop. Something really bright this time. With the lathe off, I'm going to use orange to draw or color in each of the spiral cuts. What's nice about doing this on the lathe is it allows me to manipulate the blank with my left hand with a hand wheel and have lots of control with my right hand holding this brush tip Sharpie pen. I really like brush tips for this type of texturing because the tip is very fine and it allows me to get all the way down into the valley of that texture. Now that the valleys are colored, I'm going to color the upper surface with a contrasting color. I'm choosing pink. I'm going to turn the lathe on very nice and slow, and I'm going to focus on the sections that have no color in them first. Another section that needs color. And the last section out at the rim. Now you'll notice I didn't get all of the wood. That's intentional. Now I'm going to go back over the sections that I've textured with a higher speed on the lathe just to skip across the ridges that were created in that texture. Ever so gently. Now if there are some spots that you notice along the way, oh, I missed a little spot with the orange. This is a great time to take care of it. And now I'm going to deal with the handle. I'm going to go halfway up with the pink and saturate that color in. Let it dry a little bit. Do a really light coat up here towards the top. Now I'm going to apply the orange to the upper portion of the handle and show you a blending technique that I really like to do. I'm basically saturating the tip of the handle and then blending down into the pink. And now I'm going to press a paper towel against it and just go back and forth to blend. It almost gives an airbrushed type of effect. I'm going to trim the color using black. I'm going to give your eye a focal point between the top surface of the body and the handle, as well as out by the rim. Now it's time to part it off just as before, but I'm going to give you one more technique that you can add to your toolbox of embellishment options. V-cuts. You can hear that harmonic. That's a little bit different than chatter work, and it's called ribbing. This is a really subtle technique for adding some really subtle and clean cut texture. You'll be able to see it very subtly after I remove it from the lathe. There's just a little bit of ribbing out towards the edge here. I'm going to blacken that in so that it really stands out, but that means I need to remove some wood here and allow my pen some access to the underside of this top. Ribbing is accomplished when the wood flexes in and out of the cut away from the tool. So the smaller the attachment to the rest of the blank, the more the wood will want to flex. I'm going to slow the lathe down using my black pen, using the side. I'm going to blacken in the entire underside of the top. I'm going to go with the saturated effect first, and then I can always add some gloss lacquer or even a satin or a semi-gloss lacquer out of a rattle can after it's off the lathe if I want extra protection. Letting it dry a little bit, going for another coat. Remember that ribbing is going to be ever so subtle. Again, getting ready to cradle the handle. Gliding that bevel and being very patient. Ever so slight a barb on the bottom, so I need to use my burnishing technique with the ways of the bed. And now that tip is nice and polished. If you look ever so carefully at the underside, there's a really nice, smooth, and very subtle ribbing texture that is a spiral texture for the bottom of the top. That was that harmonic with the wood bouncing in and out of the cut. And the black shows it off very nicely. The top of the body, 2 spirals cut using the Henry Taylor ELF tool. Orange and pink blended in the handle like it's airbrushed using a paper towel technique. And then black pinstriping added at the top of the handle, the base of the handle, and to trim the texture out towards the rim. Another great spinner. So there you have it. One of my favorite practice projects using only the skew. Well, I added in a couple embellishing tools as well. One that you can make in your shop using a modular handle and a hacksaw blade. Another you can purchase from Henry Taylor, the ELF tool, with your choice of bit to cut a spiral or a pattern in the top surface. And the use of color using your favorite brand of permanent or water-based ink pen that you can find at your drugstore, your local hardware store, or your office supply or art supply store. And then of course using a simple paper towel to blend 2 colors one to the other as if it's been airbrushed. This project is a great skill builder, using 4 of the 6 basic cuts with a Lofstrom 3/8" round shank skew. I also incorporated some other tools, but I incorporated 4 of the 6 basic cuts using this tool. The first, planing from a square to a cylinder and sizing for my spigot and my chuck. Second, a peeling cut if you needed to make the blank smaller for your chuck jaws and to size the handle of the top. Third, a paring cut to clean up the fibers across the top surface of the spinning top body. And fourth and final, a V-cut to establish the underside of the top and the point that is oh so important to its success as a spinning top. Once you've tried your hand at some spinning tops, challenge your skill level a little bit more and go for some micro tops. There are 3 in this glass vial, the largest, the middle, and the smallest. Give your turning technique a challenge. It requires the exact same cuts as the larger spinning tops, just in a very, very, very small scale. You have less room for error. Give it a try. The smallest of the 3 is the hardest to turn, especially because collecting it, well, I had to employ a special technique. I took the skew and I rub it against my jeans just to get a little bit of static electricity on it. So when I part it off using that little tiny micro V cut, the spinning top actually just sticks to the skew. That's how I collect it. Getting it into the glass vial is a story all of its own. You can make spinning tops this small with some practice. You need to have a super sharp tool. You need to have great biomechanics, and you need to understand those 4 basic cuts that I use for the spinning tops. Practice on larger size spinning tops first, and then work your way down smaller and smaller and smaller. It's a great challenge for biomechanics. It's a great challenge for your tool presentation as well. In exploring your skill development using the skew, you've probably encountered 2 of the most common learning opportunities, a skate and a catch, and probably that combination of a skate into a catch. Let's take a look at what happens in a skate. In a normal planing cut, you glide the bevel behind the edge. The bevel is gliding, shaving pressure is on top, and the shaving pressure is less than the bevel pressure. In a skate, there is no bevel gliding behind the edge. So as you skate, you're lifting the bevel off the wood, and the pressure of the shaving is greater than the support or the pressure against the bevel, resulting in a climbing cut or a spiral cut. Let me turn this by hand and I'll show you what I mean. As I move the shank or the handle of the tool away from the axis of rotation, there is no bevel contact behind, and the edge will slice and create a thread. As that happens, it accelerates along the blank as the shank and the handle go perpendicular to the axis of rotation. Bevel gliding, edge cutting, remove the bevel from the wood, more pressure. You can see that the shaving is quite a bit more pronounced. The edge sliced into the wood really cleanly because it's a clean cut, a sharp edge, but I put a lot more force into it, so you can see it's quite a bit deeper. Let me do it at a faster speed. Turn the lathe speed up, clean off this cylinder with a nice planing cut. Again, I do not have the dust collector on, so you can hear what happens. It's a very clean cut. Take the bevel off the wood and it skates. Faster speed of the lathe just means that everything happens a little bit faster. Let me move over to this clean portion of the cylinder, and I'm going to do it with less pressure. Same speed, less pressure. I come in, I'm going to do a light grip with my hands, light touch. You'll hear a difference and see a difference. Bevel gliding, cut. You'll notice this skate is quite a bit less dramatic and it's much shorter. It's because as the shank comes perpendicular to the axis of rotation, that actually pushes the tool back away from the wood, relieving the skate. First skate, quite a bit more aggressive, much deeper and much longer. Second skate, I initiated the skate in this portion of the cylinder. Here's the skate happening. Initially very aggressive, large shavings, and as it came perpendicular, it relieves itself, pushing the tool out of the wood and exiting. So two examples of a skate, one with much more pressure introduced into the tool, another one with much less pressure. The one with more pressure was much more dramatic. It'll wipe out details in a hurry. One with less pressure and more finesse relieves itself much faster and relieves the tool from the wood, actually kicking the tool away from the wood to relieve the skate. These are a great learning opportunity when you're practicing your skills with the skew. They give you a lot of feedback on what's happening at the edge if you understand that the shaving pressure is overriding the pressure of the bevel or the support of the bevel. Let's take a look at what happens with a catch. A catch occurs when a portion of the edge engages with the wood that is neither supported by the bevel contact directly behind the edge, nor by the tool rest supporting the shank of the tool. If I engage this by hand doing a planing cut using the short point of the edge, I have full bevel support both with the wood contacting the bevel behind that edge, but I also have support from the tool rest in line with that portion of the edge. If I engage higher on the edge, towards the middle of the skew, or up towards the long point will start to dig in. There's no bevel contact there, and it will buck the tool down into the tool rest. It will also rotate the tool in my hand. With a round shank, it's much more forgiving as it can roll on the tool rest and relieve itself. If I get a square shank skew into the view of the camera, you'll see that it's much different. Let me use this large square shank or rectangular shank skew to illustrate. If I use the short point, I have full bevel contact. If I move up to the middle, I have bevel contact and support, but I do not have tool rest support in line with that portion of the edge. If I introduce the long point of the skew into the wood, there's no bevel contact with the wood, and there is no tool rest support for that portion of the edge. It will engage, it will slam the tool down flat onto the tool rest, right there. And as it does, we'll engage and chip the wood out. Having cleaned up the cylinder using my round shank skew, I have a clean palette to show the difference between a catch with a round shank skew and a catch with a radius edge but rectangular shank skew. Let me put a little boundary line in the middle here so you can see the difference of the two. So we'll do a round shank skew on the right hand side and a rectangular shank skew on the left hand side. Round shank first. When I do this real time, I'm spinning this cylinder at just over 2,000 RPM, so it'll happen really fast. I'm going to use a light touch so that the effects aren't quite as dramatic, but we'll still be able to see the effects. I'm going to go into a planing cut, bevel contacting, cutting, and rotate the long point in. Let me do that again. Planing cut, rotate the long point in. Not very dramatic at all. That's a really light touch for you. You can see feathers out, long point gets in, rags up the fibers. Let me do a little bit more dramatic next to it. Planing cut, a little bit more force, long point in. Do it again. Planing cut. You notice the tool kicks just slightly and I have a light touch, so it relieves itself. You can see the fibers are ragged up by the long point coming down, and it rotates itself out of the cut. Let me do the same thing with a rectangular shank skew on the other side. This is a 1-inch rectangular shank with a radius edge. Again, a planing cut, anchor, bevel contact, planing cut. I'll introduce, you'll hear the difference. Let me stop and show what happened. I was in a nice planing cut, rotating up the edge, long point engages here, and look at the difference in the damage. Let me do a little bit more dramatic on this portion over here. Clean off the tool rest and the tool. Clean palette, a little bit more force. Wow, you could hear that, couldn't you? Much more damage as the rectangular shank is slammed into the tool rest. And there's the result. You may be thinking that there's quite a difference in the edge that can present to the wood at once. That's true, however, the damage is actually done because of the shank design. The shank being a flat facet on the back, fed down and cannot continue to relieve itself as it goes into the catch. It bottoms out and the force has to be relieved somewhere, either the tool kicking back, which remember in this one I held it a little bit more firmly, so then the wood has to break out. In the less dramatic catch, I didn't hold the tool quite as firmly, so it relieved itself much faster and much easier. With the round shank, the initial catch was really not very dramatic. It just needs to be cleaned up. As I held it a little bit more firmly, there was a little bit more damage each time and a deeper groove that went all the way around. That's because the round shank does not have a flat facet to bottom out on. It rotates over and relieves itself. We just took a look at what goes into a skate, which is a clean cut thread up a cylinder. Wipes out details pretty quickly. And we took a look at a catch, which blows out a portion of the wood to relieve that force. Oftentimes these two come together. A skate first, right into a catch, but it happens so fast that it feels like it's just a catch. Let's take a look and see what happens when you have a skate leading into a catch, so you have the combination. I'm going to use a rectangular shank because the effects will be much more dramatic and easier for you to see. We'll go into a skate, followed by a catch. It's kind of a dreaded combination of the two together. It's pretty dramatic. The tool will move across the cylinder or climb the cylinder, and then ending in a catch to blow out the blank. This isn't my favorite to demonstrate, just so you know. I try to avoid it at all costs, but it's a good teaching and learning moment. Go a skate into a catch. Ready? Skate, happening now, and a catch. Let's stop and take a look at that. That wipes out quite a bit of real estate in your turning. Skate was pretty ragged, a wide edge, resulting in a catch right here. And if you look really carefully, this is where the tool kicked out and there's no damage beyond it. So that's the point of exit. Let me do a little bit heavier skate into a catch on this side. Do a little boundary mark there. Skate into a catch, a little bit more force. Planing, move the tool handle a little bit faster than the tool. Oh. Let's try that again. Planing cut. Skate into a catch. You can see that as I got the skate, it came down into a catch and bucked and then re-entered and then did another catch. Even did a third catch right here. So there's really kind of 3 catches along the way as the tool exited the wood. That's what happens when you put more force into it. It will buck and re-enter, buck and re-enter. So as you can see, a skate oftentimes results in a catch. Those two blur together quite a bit, but if you isolate one, the skate, you'll see a nice clean set of threads cut all the way up your cylinder or your turning. A catch is when it blows out or tries to relieve that force, resulting from no bevel contact behind the edge and no tool rest support for the portion of the edge that you're engaging. Oftentimes a skate then leads into a catch because the shaving climbs up the edge and forces that long point into the wood, resulting in a blowout at the end. The more force you put into the tool, the more aggressive your grip or your stance and your pressure into the wood, the more dramatic that catch and that skate will be. The lighter the touch, the less dramatic and the less damage that happens to the blank. It's my hope that this video, along with the skills that I introduced and the projects that I incorporated as skill building projects, will help you gain confidence at the lathe. Thanks for including me in your journey.